Bases dropped on a new round of SDH AM. John, hear you there. The hair's out of control, and we might be by the time we're done. It's Monday, which means we got a lot to react to. I know that we've got a lot on folks' minds when it comes to what happened or what didn't happen involving Atlanta United and the matchup against Columbus. We got numbers. We've got post-game. You will hear from Jay Fortune. You will hear from Will Riley. You will hear from Miguel Almiron. So we'll have that here this morning. Obviously, Abe Gordon's going to join us a little less than 10 minutes like he always does, and we'll go over what's on Abe's mind, looking at United and Crew, because you now have a matchup in a very tough place to play traditionally coming up this weekend for Atlanta as they go to Chicago to take on the Fire. We are efforting, as we always do in this situation, our buddy Max Anderson, the radio play-by-play voice for the Fire. So when we have Oppo Research at some point this week, Max will hop in. He'll break everything down involving Chicago, and there's a bit of a window and a mirror there as well, because after this past weekend, Chicago beat Nashville 1-0. So then after Chicago, Atlanta comes back. They take on Nashville, and then they take on New England in a weekend midweek later on, and then they continue rolling through the end of the month. So there's a bit of a window of opportunity here where, in a way, you get to talk about Nashville and how Chicago pinned Nashville in for the 1-0 win they had last weekend. We'll talk about Chicago, and then that gives us information when we catch up with our buddy Lucas Panzica to find out next week about what he has seen from Nashville this year. So that's what we're staring at least from an Atlanta United perspective today. There's a lot of news to get into, a bunch of different places. If we don't get into it today on the morning show, soccer over there is tonight at 8 o'clock. We'll get into it there, because just to give you an idea of everything on the rundown that I've got, I have you've got a Neville in Portland that is catching a lot of heat, and he had to answer to it in post-match. We might get into that tomorrow, since Casey White will be joining us then. Casey was actually in Salt Lake at Rio Tinto for the RSL match, and so we'll catch up with her about that. So tomorrow is probably going to be our rest of MLS and NWSL day and news and things and getting you ready for Champions League and all that other stuff. That might be tomorrow. Today is probably Atlanta United, today and tonight. Atlanta United, what's on your mind after what we saw, all the other news of the morning, guests coming to visit. In addition to Abe, obviously at the top of the next hour, Bart Keeler is going to join us, technology permitting. And we've got to get into one refereeing decision, specifically one that wasn't made. And then he has stuff on the USMNT. And then there is another match that we have to get into, specifically Toronto and Colorado, where you had 3 reds and you had 29 fouls called. So that's an interesting ratio to get into. So Bart's going to be busy in hour number 2. And we'll go over cards and calls and the play that we talked about in full-time report from Mercedes-Benz, where I think that if something happens in the early 30s involving the play with Max Arfston, obviously I think the tenor of the match is different. And as Abe says, goals change games. And so we'll get into that with Bart coming up in hour number 2. Other news, obviously, Wednesday it looks like. We're going to be catching up with the executive vice president of the Canadian Premier League, Kostas Smirniotis. And it would have been this morning, but he's on a plane. And we know how planes can act these days. Wednesday looks like he's going to join us in the first hour, because the CPL, and this is something that we probably should talk to Bart about as well, in addition to his topics. So Bart might be busy this morning, where the CPL has trotted out a trial on the Wenger rule for offside. They have also trotted out the challenge, the red card challenge that we've seen in under 18 tournaments and the U tournaments involving the U.S. men's national team. I remember last year I saw Marko Mitrovic, I think, before he moved on to take the New England gig. You had the red card challenge. I think it was in a U18 qualifier in CONCACAF. So they're test piloting that. They're test piloting the Wenger offside rule, and they're test piloting another couple of things that we'll get into with Bart today and with Kostas Smirniotis from the Canadian Premier League. He's going to visit us on Wednesday to talk about all of these pilot programs going on. They actually did have a successful red card challenge And that was this past weekend in the beginning of their season. So the CPL is off and running, and they have all these different things that they're kind of kicking the tires on just to kind of be the world's guinea pig on it. So a lot for Bart to get into in hour number 2. Just to give you an idea about everything else worldwide, it is the BBC came out with a bunch of numbers having to do with the EFL Championship and how much money it is losing across the board. They added up all the numbers with all the franchises, just how much money they're losing, and if there should be a concern about the second division in England. Our friend Paul Quinn came out with another massive treatise, and we're, like I said, we're efforting Paul Quinn as well with all the work that he has done analyzing Eagle Football Holdings, and with what he has been able to glean from now. And stop me if you've heard this before. John Textor has decided that he wants to sue somebody again. So, the recourse of John Textor is to take folks to court. And so I guess it's something akin to the People's Textor. And so he is now going to take other folks to court, considering the most recent rulings that were against him, because that's his most convenient recourse. So, like I said, we're efforting Paul Quinn because we may get into it this morning as well, just depending on how much time we have. But it'll be there for this week. But John Textor, once again, taking folks to court over the current rulings and the state of play. And so we'll get into that just to be informed on that situation. Bernardo Silva, his future has been announced by his agent. Busy day for Ben Jacobs yesterday and today. So we'll get into that at some point. FA, we've got to get into at some point to discuss what happened there. And then in soccer over their territory tonight, they could be in Brazil unifying the A division and the B division. So it'd be like 40 teams, and they're looking at relegation, trying to figure out what's going on there. That's probably tonight when it comes to SOT. So now, pushing 9:15-ish, and I believe that Chipper has probably been walked or is probably just going to be staring at Abe for the next 17 minutes or so and find out what's going on. So am I right about the former or the latter?
Probably the latter. Hopefully she's laying down right now. Well, I can see her. She is laying down right now, but hopefully that holds. I'm not overly confident in that because there's some yard work going outside and she's hearing some noises. So we'll see how that goes.
Yep. And so we'll see if there's any audience participation over at the Casa de Abe here in this particular segment. And Abe, I guess, is evolving into opening kickoff, brought to us by our friends at Black Pitch Coffee and blackpitchcoffee.com. We start your day with the most important stories in the game. Right way to start your morning. Black Pitch Coffee, part of the SDH community, showing up at events all over Atlanta. Try their home blend made with beans from Brazil and Guatemala, heavy-bodied, notes of walnut, semi-sweet chocolate, and a rich world-class finish. Opening kickoff, powered by Black Pitch Coffee and blackpitchcoffee.com. All right, now that you've had 36 hours or so to think about it, anything else stick in your mind from what we saw on Saturday night?
Just really frustrating. There'd been a run of games. Obviously, you beat Philly. You're better than Philly. You kind of hoped you were better than DC. DC didn't want to play, but you were able to get a result at least. And you came into this game, and I know Columbus's record could be misleading or kind of viewed that way in one manner or shape, but you were on a level playing field or even with them, and could find a result somehow by staying close, I guess. And it didn't happen. And it was pretty apparent early on that they were problematic for you. You couldn't really find comfortable ways to break their press. A long ball here, a long ball there. But I mean, it felt like 20 minutes of just absolute onslaught on your defensive left side, their attacking right side. And there was just no ability to get the ball switched to the other side, to Jakob or eventually up to Moranchuk would have been the plan, but it just couldn't get there. And so it was pressure. But they didn't really ultimately turn into much of a attack for them. And so you go to halftime, it's 0-0, and you're like, all right, you survived all that pressure. What do you have out of half? And unfortunately, they were the team that came out of half with the right mindset, and you did not. They scored 3 minutes in, they score 8 minutes in, it's 2-0. And then we get that nasty trend here, John, where you score and concede almost immediately. And It's the second time this season, specifically, I think at 2-0 to make it 2-1 to then make it 3-1, where it's just like, man, you feel like you're back into this game. You got plenty of time to find another goal. And like before we even write down who got the goal and who got the assist, you look up and Lucas Hoyos is digging the ball off the back of his net too. And it's just really, really frustrating. And you know, I talked with you about it early in the season. I talked with you about it in the preseason about this idea of a work in progress, and it's not going to be perfect early on. But there's a little concern that it's no improvement. Not that there's minimal improvement, but that there's no improvement. You obviously look good against Philly. Philly's potentially the worst team in MLS. And so
Montreal and Orlando might have something to say about that.
Yeah, and maybe you can get some wins there, and maybe we start to feel good about ourselves for a week. But it was supposed to be a work in progress. I understood it would be a slow start. I just don't see any progress, and I don't know where you would get it from. You know, I see a bunch of people in chat. It's regression. It's regression. No, it's not regression, because that would infer that you were good at some point during this run. I don't think you've regressed, but you certainly haven't gotten any better either. And at some point, I start to wonder if the expectation is that you're not going to get better, because I'm starting, even though I preach we're going to be patient, I'm starting to fall towards that line.
Tata Martino after the match, you mentioned the second half, so I'm pulling this quote. Like I said, we'll hear in the show from Jay Fortune, Will Riley, and Miguel Almiron. And so the quote sheet from Tata, talking about the energy and intensity level in the second half, quote, "I think more than a lack of intensity, we felt the first goal of Columbus. Evidently, spiritually, we're a bit off. There's a situation, as I understand it, that the players have observed that last season is repeating itself now, and it seems to me that there isn't a lack of intensity because we're not missing physical or soccer qualities. I think it has much more to do with the spiritual," end quote. Interesting from Tata that Tata is looking at it from between the ears. He's not looking at it from what's going on in front. And as you mentioned, regression and, seeing what we're seeing this season. Tata is thinking that the black cloud may still be there for some folks and at some points, and trying to shake it. Trying to shake a black cloud, obviously, is when things continue to happen and happen and happen. Shaking that black cloud can be it could take a whole lot more than you might anticipate in a situation. But right now, Tata leans that way from what happened with the first goal, and then probably with what happened when you're 2-0 and 2-1 and 3-1.
Yeah, I don't like the black cloud idea because it feels like you're blaming the last regime for holdover issues, and that's just not good enough as a leader, in my opinion. But there's something going on. I don't know if it's that, but it's been very odd because you look at let's just say first 15, because I think we gave up one goal relatively early, like 17, 18 minutes out of halftime. You've either been really good in games or you've been really bad. And in many of these games, either you have scored or conceded like 4 or 5 minutes in, to the point where one of them's a trend. And unfortunately, you've conceded more 4 or 5 minutes in than you have scored 4 or 5 minutes in. But they have got to figure out the mentality. And we've seen a couple of things, right? They one time they didn't come out of the tunnel until right before kickoff and kind of delayed it there. And obviously that didn't help. So they got to figure it out. But we can't have this blaming the last regime or blaming last year's season on the players' mentality. Like that's not leadership to me. That's excuse making. And so I don't ride with that, especially when a lot of them are the same players, right? And so individually, it's up to each player to kind of figure out if they can do more, how they can do more. But ultimately, at the end of the day, John, I think you're looking at players and they're just not good enough. It was another performance for Latte Loth where you're like, I don't even know. Did he practice with these guys the whole week? Like, is there any communication or connectivity at all? And it's just none with him. And then obviously, again, we've had this discussion before. The Miggy thing is just not working out. And so is it a situation where you can find ways away from them, where you can find buyouts or loans or whatever? Even with Tata, who's supposed to be this mythical great manager, and obviously he's had an incredible run at many stops in his career. I don't even think he can get this thing going in the right direction, based on the players he's been given and the quality that those players are at right now. So it's tough, but I don't know where you're headed right now unless major changes coming on the personnel side in terms of on the pitch.
But you can only do so much in a cap league with windows that are not universal. If you're going to go down
No,
that,
it's you can't remake your whole squad. You're also dealing. I mean, this isn't Major League Baseball where you can just spend whatever money you want, and if you pay a penalty, you pay a penalty. Like it's incredibly difficult to turn over the top end of a roster in MLS, especially when the players at that top end are not necessarily out of that contract, and so yeah, you're looking. I mean, I hate saying this. You're looking at multiple windows,
Mhm.
and still maybe not
Well,
being able to
like
turn it over.
Chris Henderson has admitted as much that it's going to be multiple windows here.
But I'm not even thinking like two. I'm thinking like three. I'm thinking like three windows minimum to get what you want in, and that's assuming the players you bring in are doing their jobs, right? I mean, we've seen this organization even before the current regime go out, get high price designated players. Some have flourished and some have floundered, right? And so, I mean, the idea of turning this around in two windows, three windows, even that is with the presumption that the guy you bring in is significantly better than the guy he's replacing, and that guy is a home run, not a swing and a miss. And so, yeah, it's going to be really difficult here to get this thing moving in the right direction. And then at that point, the question is, how long is Tata going to be here? Right, that's a question we've had from the very beginning. Just because, only because of his history has shown he doesn't stick around too long in many places. Is he going to be here for a full on kind of rebuild?
To answer your question on Latte Lot, I've got his numbers up from Saturday. Obviously, no shots. He passing, it was 12 of 14, 6 of 6 in his own half, 6 of 8 in the opposition half. On the dribble, 18 touches in 90 minutes. Fouled once. Total carrying distance just under 39 meters. Had one progressive carry on the day. And defensively, he had 2 recoveries and won a duel. So that's what Emmanuel Latte Lot had
Did you have numbers in the attacking third?
on for Latte Lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, hang on just a second. Let me get back to it. Attacking third, passes in the opposition half, 6 of 8 on the day. And then once again on the dribble, 18 touches and fouled once, carrying distance 38.6 meters, one progressive carry, 4 carries. And so all of his carry distance was positive. He had 4 carries, 1 progressive, and 18 touches on the day.
So all of that you mentioned was in the opponent's half.
Mm-hmm.
I would mention almost none of that was within 25 yards of goal. And that's the problem. You're dealing with him touching the ball and dribbling and looking for passes between the midway line and essentially the top of the arc, in front of goal.
Yeah.
There's just nothing in the box. There's just nothing that feels dangerous. At times, I don't know what the goal is to try and win headers because he's never on time, and I'm very confused at why he even jumps half the time. And then we just kind of see him sprint after the goalie sometimes when the goalie has possession, and it's just there's just nothing there. I was hopeful there would be more there this season. Made some excuses for him over last season in terms of not having an off season and the injury and trying to get into rhythm and all this. The end of the day, multiple times last year, I said every time Jamal Tiare is in here, it feels like he's more connected to the attack. They trade Tiare, oddly enough, to Columbus, who we did not get a chance to see. And it was just one of those things like, all right, no more excuses. There's no one to look over your shoulder here. It's you or no one. You had a resting off season. You've now had time in the franchise, And it's just like, it's not there. Like we saw the one goal against Philly, right? And I think Miggy played it through to him, and he had wide open space. And you're like, man, that's a Latte Loth goal, right? The highlight montage they showed us when they added him, it was full of those, and we're just not getting any of that. And it almost feels like he's unwilling to adapt his style of play, just continuing to look for that sort of goal. They're not coming because that's not how the attack works right now. And he is not involved in the rest of it. So yeah, I don't know. I thought he would be better with TRA gone, maybe a little bit of pressure off of his shoulders. The problem now is you don't have TRA, so there's no other option. I don't really view any of the other strikers on this roster as options you can move forward with. So you're stuck with them. I understand the payment is part of the reason why you're going to continue to play him, but it's like you're playing 10 on 11. He just has no real goal scoring chops for you. And it's frustrating. It's really frustrating because I thought your defense played okay. Obviously moments it faltered. I thought Hoyos was okay. Yeah, 3 goals. I get it. But I thought he also made a couple of really nice saves. He had a bunch of one-on-ones that Columbus just loved drilling directly into his body for whatever reasons. I do think, but he had a really nice kick save. He had a quality save when he was screened early on as well. So, he wasn't the problem. I don't think the defense was the problem. But you're not scoring any goals here. And so you're just not going to win games.
To answer your question about when goals were being given up so far this season. So in Cincinnati, it was 2 in the final 10 minutes. It was Denke and Hagelin. When it was 0-0, Atlanta United was shorthanded. They fought and gave up 2 in the final 10. Then in San Jose, it was the goal early from Preston Judd. Then Useni Buddha scored with 11 to go. Then you have all of the back and forth against RSL, where you had Solon scoring, Hazarkani scoring, and then you had Xavier Gozo scoring. So 3 goals in 17 minutes in the first half. And Alexei Miranchuk had made it 2-1. And then, much like we had mentioned about what happened in this matchup on Saturday night with Columbus, Xavier Gozo scored less than 2 minutes later after Miranchuk scored, and then it was 3-1. Atlanta comes back and makes it 3-2, and that was your final there. Also, it was let's see. So I'll go ahead and do the minutes on the scoring from Philly. That was with 3 to go with Agustin Anello when the game was out of hand. And then you're with Columbus. And so the second time this season, technically, where you had got a game to 2-1, then you give up a goal under 2 minutes later, and it turns into 3-1, and that was the final with Columbus. So it happened against RSL, and it happened against Columbus this season.
Yeah. It's a problem. I mean, what is there to say? I've never seen a team concede so quickly multiple times in a season. And so it's just you gotta be better. Again, whether it's directly after one of your goals, whether it's directly out of half, the composure, the moment, the handling of the moment has not been very good. So you sit near the bottom of the Eastern Conference, and a fair run of these games have been at home. I know you've got a couple more. You're on the road this week, and then more home games, and then you got a road game, and then more home games, and then obviously a long stretch of road games into and post World throughout the World Cup. And it kind of feels like if anything were to have happened this season, it needed to be during this run of home games. You're about midway through with a couple of road games sprinkled in. And you have 4 points. And so it's not very good, obviously. And it's unfortunate because you kind of write off the first couple of weeks as building into it. You have the performance against Philly, and you're like, okay, let's see what they can do here. And we understand that Philly's bad. That's part of it, but it was still an incredibly strong performance. You have the result against DC in which they weren't interested in playing, and you kind of blame the fact that you couldn't find a goal there on the fact that they were uninterested. And then you get this game where it felt like the team should have been close to evenly matched. And certainly on the score line, it wasn't. On the shot total output, it wasn't. So yeah, it's frustrating, and I don't know how you get it back on track. I don't see where it would come from to get things on the track that most of us fans wanted it / expected it to be on. I don't know where that step comes from.
Then you go to Chicago this weekend. Then you come back in the midweek and you're in Chattanooga for Open Cup on the 15th. Then you have the weekend midweek with Nashville and New England at home. Then you head to Toronto after New England, and that gets you through the end of April. Then you've got the 2 home games in May, and then you're on the road until August 15th. I mean, obviously, yes, the World Cup is in there because of in the middle of all of that, but you've got 6 on the road after your home game against LA Galaxy on May the 9th, and then it's like you're gone. They're going to manicure the grass. They're going to make sure it's good to go for the World Cup competition. But yeah, after May the 9th, 6 in a row on the road, and then you're not home again until August 15th. So that's where things stand with Atlanta United. You didn't think we'd be just blowing through and we'd be going 17 minutes in a hurry like that, huh?
Well, look, the problem is none of it. It's not fun to dump on the team, right? The Philly post game was so much fun, and now we're back to kind of not having a lot of fun. And it'd be much better to talk about all the things that we were wowed by and how great this was and how great that was. But it's just a situation you find this team in, and you're like, man. Not only did they lose the game, but there's very few positives to take away from it, right? And I think you look at different teams or different times, even for Atlanta United, where you could say, yeah, you lost, but this did that or that did that, or I mean, there's so few true positives that are coming out of the team right now. You can force your way into, hey, this midfielder did good, or Lucas Oil's made a couple of point blank saves. You lost 3-1. I mean, there's just you got to force yourself to find positives right now, unfortunately. And hey, we don't want to say Jay Fortune's back in the lineup. Like, that's a good thing. We'll see how he gets used, but that doesn't really make me feel much better about the effort Saturday night at the Bend. So yeah, got to regroup. And then, like you mentioned, Chicago is a team coming off a blistering start to their season that I don't know if too many of us expected them to do what they've done in the early portions. That includes taking out previously top seeded Nashville just this past Saturday. So you're running into a buzzsaw on top of the fact that you've got no bite. So that's going to be a tough one.
Yep, and then you've got Nashville after that one. So that's the schedule irony.
I'm worried about the U.S. Open Cup, to be honest. I get bounced in 32.
Well, no, I'm not. All right, so how's Chipper? Is Chipper staring at you off camera?
She is right here on the other side of my computer, ready to roll. But she seems to have made it quite politely.
Okay. Well, I mean, sometimes when you have a studio audience that is vocal, that's never a bad thing either. As always, my friend, great to have you batting leadoff with us every single week, and we'll break it all down. And so get Chipper out of there and have a good one. We'll catch up with you soon.
Yeah. Appreciate it, John.
There goes Abe Gordon, 92.9 The Game, my tag team partner with the post-game show. He runs lead. Who am I kidding? He runs lead for that post-game show. And so it's pregame with Abe and Maddie, post-game with me and Abe for the home games. Maddie's in there for post-game on the road, except when she has other duties and things like that. So I pinch it for Maddie on the road games, and it's always fun to catch up with Abe to bat leadoff. Okay. I know that it has been a spirited conversation in the Twitch pitch, and I would have not anticipated anything different. And let me go through the numbers, and I know that there's a lot of anger, I guess, at this point. It's probably just go ahead and say it. There's a lot of anger at front office. There's a question. I think it was Emilio that had posted a question about Culebro, and my thought on Culebro is Obviously, he's got to get settled in. He knew what the franchise he knew what his duties were with the franchise coming in, because it is both men's and women's teams, because he did that at Liga MX. And so he is probably taking a fine-tooth comb look at everything here that Chris Henderson and Demetrius Estathiou, Chris Henderson, and Skate Nofsinger have presented to him in probably rather large form. So, like I said, there's only, and this was the point that I made with Abe, there's only so much you can do within Windows. And you've got to figure out your patience level with the roster this season, and then heading into Windows and the adjustments that you can make there, and then continue to make those adjustments into the second half of the season. To that effect, since I know that there are a lot of folks who are looking at the roster situations, and I know that you're looking, and you guys have mentioned certain players in particular. So let me do this. This is January. Let me see if there is another. I wanted to go over the contract statuses just so you all have the knowledge base going forward. Okay, so this is contract statuses as of March the 6th. And so here's what you have to look for. This is senior roster spots for Atlanta United. And I'm doing this just so we all can be on the same page when it comes to all of the contracts and all of the player expectations and things like that. So here we go. Designated players. Miggy and Alexei Miranchuk are under contract through 27, option year of 28. Latelot, designated player, contract through 28, option year 29. And remember, also when it comes to players and length of deal, it is so, and we mention the economics of this every once in a while. It's about controlling the asset. And so that way you have that particular asset under your control for X number of years, so you can navigate interest from other clubs. Elias Baez is a U22, and he is under contract through 28, option years 29 and 30. Tomas Jacob is a U22. He is under contract through 28-29. Then option years 29-30 and 30-31. TAM players, Alzate under contract through 2030. Barakal is on loan once again through the end of June. Then you have the contract option to pick up, and I believe that's through 29 if I'm reading this correctly. Stian Gregerson under contract through 27 with an option year of 28. Saba is out of contract after this year. Enea Mihai is under contract through 28, option year 29. Tristan out of contract this season with an option year of 27. Pedro Amador, same. Under contract through 26, option year 27. Ronald Hernandez, contract through 26, option year 27. Jaden Hibbert and all the rest of the players that are senior roster players have contracts through 26. Jaden Hibbert, Lucas Hoyos, Fafa Pico, Sergio Santos, Cayman Togashi. Option years. We mentioned Amador and Hernandez for 27. Jaden Hibbert, 27, and then again in 28. Lucas Hoyos for 27, the end of the sprint season. So when you hear a June 27, that is the end of that sprint schedule. Then you have the summer break, and then you have MLS getting on the calendar with everybody else. So 27 and beyond. So if you see a June 27 contract expiration or option, that's the end of the sprint season. Then for Lucas Hoyos, once again, sprint season ending, and then the end of the 27-28 season. Then Fafa Pico is sprint season 27. Sergio Santos, 27. Cayman Togashi is just out of contract through 26, no option years to follow. Supplemental roster, all the homegrowns. Luke Brennan, 27 with an option for 28. Dominic Chongqui, 28 with an option for 29. Matthew Edwards, homegrown, contract through 26, option for 27. Jay Fortune, contract expires at the end of 26. Adrian Gill through June of 27. Then the 3 seasons after, so Gill's contract is through the sprint season. Then he has option years for the 3 following fall to spring years, 27, 28, 28, 29, 29, 30. Santi Pita under contract through 26, option years 27, 8, and 9. Will Riley, 26, option years 27, 28. Cooper Sanchez, the same, 26, option years 27, 28. Aiden Torres, contract through 27, option year 28. Supplemental spot 31, Ashton Gordon, who is on loan to Chattanooga FC. His contract runs through 26, option years 27 and 28. Caden Moore, who is on loan to Philadelphia Union 2, his contract runs through 28, and his option year is 29. So right now, 8 international slots are taken. You have an international slot to give. You have 3 DPs. You have a U22 slot available to you. And Chris Henderson has mentioned the approach in looking to fill that with the positions. I believe it was last week when he had his conversation with the media as to what he might be looking for to fill that in consultation with the coaching staff. So you have a U22 slot available. You have an international slot available. And your GAM right now is just under $350,000. So that's where you are as of early March. So that's just so we're all informed going forward. That's the contract situations that when we get into windows or when you have folks who are interested in certain players, that's how much time is left on contracts and so forth. So that's just, I wanted to have that information out there for all of us going forward. So as we get into windows and things like that, then you have that to look at and understand, okay, decisions are to be made here, here, and here with options going forward. So that's the element in all of that. Now, I think also you did get to see what happens when you don't have Matias Galarza in the lineup. Just in a microcosm as just a one standalone subject, I think that you got to see the relationship with Almiron, Galarza, and Baez. And I think that when you don't have Galarza there, you see where there's problems in connection. So once again, you take out a piece that you're used to having and then trying to figure out how to make that, connection fit and so on. So that was one of the things that stuck out to me. Obviously, you look at the Columbus pressuring Atlanta and Atlanta not being able to send anything long or big switches or anything like that, skipping lines. It was the 14th or 13th minute when you finally got into – it was the 11th minute when you finally got into the attacking half. I think it was the 13th minute when you finally got into the attacking third. And Columbus made it difficult for you all day long. They certainly did that. And to them, you give them absolute credit for what they were able to do defensively, and that Atlanta United found early in the second half, and then it was late in the first half, and then after the first goal, then you started to see Atlanta United skipping lines and getting space and all of that kind of stuff. But Columbus out of the blocks made it difficult for Atlanta United all day long. And you can look at possession numbers, and what I would suggest also is if you do not subscribe to the Morning Espresso newsletter that Jason puts out every day, and there's also a story that's up at soccerdownhere.net looking at numbers and how they don't tell you the full story. You can have, and this is something that we've talked about here, all of us, about possession numbers. And if you're leading in possession numbers, sometimes that means virtually nothing. That means that you've got the ball, and it's what you do with the ball when you have it is what matters. And Columbus can cede possession all they want, especially with a lead. But if Atlanta United isn't able to do anything with it because of what you're seeing defensively from Columbus, I know that you can look at stat sheets and you can sit there and go, okay, well, Atlanta had 56, 57% possession, but what did they do with it? Not a lot. First half was fairly even. Then the second half was when everything tilted. Going back to Tata Martino and what he said after the match, he said, I think the first half was even. I don't think there were very many chances created by either team to that point. XG, if you believe in that kind of stuff, total for both teams after the first 45 minutes was 0.23. Like literally like 1/4 of a point in XG. That was after the first 45 minutes. So as much as Columbus made it difficult for Atlanta defensively, which is what we've been talking about here with its evolution at the back, they were not yielding a whole lot to Columbus up that right-hand side, which is what we were thinking it was going to be, with Diego Rossi being on the right and Wessam Abu Ali working his way into the middle. So first 45 minutes, I think that it was pretty much a staring contest, at least when it came to defenses. Atlanta couldn't get anything going offensively against Columbus's defense. When Columbus tried to come down the field, Atlanta United's defense stood up to what Columbus was doing. So, like I said, numbers bear that out. 0.23 in XG in the first 45. Second 45, entirely different story. A lot of respect for both teams. Tata continued. The game opened up after their first goal in the second half. It's true that in the first half we didn't have many situations on goal, but the opponent didn't have many situations on goal. It's a game I think there was a lot of play between the boxes, but not a lot being created beyond that. And that's true. Then, once again, reminding you of the Tata quote, I think more than a lack of intensity, we felt the first goal of Columbus. Evidently, spiritually, we're a bit off. There's a situation, as I understand it, players observed that last season is repeating itself now, and it seems to me there isn't a lack of intensity because we're not missing physical or soccer qualities. I think it has much more to do with the spiritual. So we'll hang on to that. Just hang on to that going forward from Tata Martino. Also, we did mention the return of Jay Fortune and the return of Will Riley. Obviously, we'll hear from Jay coming up here in a second about what it was like for him. And I'm going to apologize for the sound because I had to pan it all the way over to one channel. So if you've got stereo speakers, don't freak out. It was one channel of audio, and I had to kind of lean everything over to one side. So when we play the sound from Miggy and Will Riley and Miguel Almiron, probably only going to come out of one speaker. Of course, I'm thinking about it like an old stereo system. So you're going to hear it on the right-hand side unless your stereo is far more advanced than mine and it blends it back over two speakers. But yeah, when I was editing it, it was only available in one channel, and so I had to pan everything over to that channel. Just warning you now when we play Jay, Will, and Miggy coming up here in just a little bit. So don't know what, like I said, don't know what Culebro has planned. Don't know how much patience he has with the current roster. We mentioned, and that was why I wanted to mention the contract situations of this roster going forward. And we don't know where he stands philosophically, but I imagine that he and Chris Henderson are going to be having a lot of conversations about the future of the club. And that was what attracted Matias Culebro into Atlanta United, and being able to create the women's side from absolute zero and scratch. So we'll see where it goes. Like I said, we'll continue to see where things go. I wanted to play the sound before we get into Bart here to start hour number 2, where we'll get into a couple of plays from the Atlanta United game, get into the MNT, get into the Toronto-Colorado match, and we'll get into that coming up here in just a little bit. So let's get into the post-match. And we had mentioned the return of Jay Fortune. And here is Jay after the match, and you'll hear Maddie leading the charge on the questions. This is post-match at Mercedes-Benz Stadium after the 3-1 loss to Columbus.
Second half for you guys.
Kind of tough to say. I think it's a little unfortunate, you get the goal and then to concede right after. I think if we're able to keep the game at 2-1 for a little while longer, the game's different, but it happens, and I think from there it's just about trying to get sustainable possession in their side of the field. I don't think we were able to do that. A lot of it was middle third and playing against the counter, so I think that's one thing we need to work on.
You got checked in at the 58th minute, back on the field for the first time since May of last year. What were the emotions for you stepping on the field?
Yeah, it was quite a bit. I think one was just excited to go through just the whole day, really. It's been a while since I went through this kind of game day process, especially being here at the Benz, and wasn't too aware of the the crowd and everything, just because once you kind of check in, you kind of lose awareness of all that. But I think once the shirt kind of went on, luckily a little bit of nerves went away, but just try to not rush into it, try to settle into the game as quick as possible and move on from there.
What would you like to see get better next week in Chicago for the team?
As a team, I think we stay in games, and from there we just need to be the one who gets the first punch, who scores the first goal, and have teams on the back foot more than we are. It's easier said than done. I've watched the first 5 this season, and it's a lot easier to watch from up there than to when you're on the field. So I think now that hopefully as I'm starting to get more and more involved with the team, we'll see going forward, and then I can provide a better answer.
Jay Fortune after the match with Atlanta United and Columbus Crew. And this is the one thing that I always despise. I don't know how many of you these days, this is a complete and total sidebar. I don't know how many of you these days get to deal with SofaScore as an website or an app. And it might be just because I have like 19 different antivirus software programs going on, but literally it will end up as it'll say there's an upload problem, and there really isn't because I'm staring at it. But then all of a sudden the application will crash, and you go on other computers that don't have as much protection as the one that I'm staring at you with, it crashes it anyway. Jay Fortune, 32 minutes plus the 14 added. So basically, Jay ended up playing a full 45 minutes by the time he was done. On the day, it was 29 of 31 passing, 16 of 18 in the opponent's half. On the dribble for Jay, 37 touches, fouled 1 time. Total, he had 13 carries, averaging about total carrying distance was just under 10 meters a carry on average, but his total progression in all of that was about 45 meters forward on the dribble. Then defensively, Jay came in, 2 defensive contributions, 1 his only tackle, had a pick, 2 recoveries, and was 3 for 3 on his duels on the day. So that was Jay Fortune in 32 minutes plus stoppage, so 45 minutes by the time he was done. Also, Will Riley getting the start. And for Will coming back, he went 58 minutes. Cooper Sanchez, obviously, with his time with the U18s, could not go a full 90, as we've seen from Cooper Sanchez. Will Riley gets the start. Cooper comes in and gives the other 32 plus 14. Will on the day, it was 24-28 passing, 12 of 14 in the opposition half. On the dribble for Will, 36 touches. It was fouled once, and he had 8 carries with a positive progression. And defensively for Will, it was 1 defensive contribution, 2 recoveries, and he won 2 of his 4 ground duels on the day. So here is Will Riley after the match, and here is some of the conversation that was had in the locker room with Will after his 58 minutes on the return here in 2026.
In a midfield trio that I don't think y'all played together before.
Yeah, it was new for sure, and we struggled at times. Columbus always makes it hard, especially in the middle. They get that box. Rossi in the pockets behind always makes it difficult. So, yeah, it was tough, but I think we had a solid first half, and then just moments in the game that got away from us. Certainly a lot to improve on, but was happy to be back out there.
Glad to see you back out there. Tata talked about a few minutes ago that he thinks sometimes when something bad happens, the team mentally kind of reverts back to last season and loses its focus. I was curious if you felt that tonight during the match, or did you see that in the previous games when you weren't playing?
I mean, I didn't feel that tonight, but obviously I think it's tough when you have a season like last season to just come in next season and be totally different. Obviously some of that stuff is going to linger. We were all here. It was all, a rough time, so we're still working through that, and clearly we haven't gotten there yet. but it's a process always.
How did Columbus make it difficult tonight for you all? Just possession.
Columbus always, I mean, I know they're not having the best season thus far, but the way they play, always options on the ball players, guys that can face forward, always options either side, people in the pockets behind. Their spacing's obviously really good. So, yeah, it's tough, but obviously we didn't make it hard enough for them.
Will Riley after the match as he was answering the questions of the media. And one more before we get to the top of the hour, and it is Miguel Almiron. And you'll hear Miggy, and you will also hear the voice of Justin Veldhouse from communications. And Miggy will start. Miggy will hear the question. He'll just start answering the question. Then Justin will come in from behind, sometimes immediately, or Justin will work the question and he will translate the question for Miggy. Miggy will answer, and then you'll hear Justin. So here is Miguel Almiron after the match, part of the conversation that he had with the assembled media. So Miggy after the 3-1 loss as well.
Buenos partidos, los dos partidos que hicimos anteriormente creo que fueron buenos, pero bueno, hoy nos tocó jugar contra Columbus, que es un gran equipo, y lamentablemente no estuvimos a la altura. Creo que tenemos que mejorar muchísimo.
I think it's frustrating because we're coming off a couple positive games. I think we've been playing well in the last 2 games, in my opinion. Today we played against Columbus, who's a very strong team, but we know that we have a lot of things to work on, and we need to respond now.
On Thursday, Tata said that you all were making progress even though the results hadn't come. Do you see tonight as a step back, or can you still see some things that are just still some signs of progress?
El jueves Tata habló de que el equipo está progresando, está evolucionando. Si crees que esta noche fue un paso atrás en ese sentido, o cómo lo ves tú?
Sí, como dije, es un poco frustrante porque la verdad que en los entrenamientos estamos entrenando de la mejor manera y luego en los partidos lamentablemente no nos están saliendo las cosas como nosotros queremos. Pero bueno, creo que tenemos que seguir, no podemos bajar los brazos ahora. Creo que en estos momentos es donde uno tiene que dar la cara y se tiene que hacer responsable.
Again, I think it's frustrating because we're training very well, but right now we're not seeing the same results in the games, or not seeing the results that we want. But I think at the moment we have to keep working. You know, we have no other option. We can't just cross our arms or put our arms down. We got to keep working and keep moving forward.
Tata said just a few minutes ago that he thinks sometimes in the games mentally y'all are still suffering from last season's results. Does it feel that way sometimes during the games? And if so, how do you break that?
No, creo que sí, a veces un poco frustrante cuando estamos. Creo que todos mis compañeros están haciendo un gran esfuerzo y luego recibimos un gol, y la verdad que creo que eso tenemos que cambiar, que tenemos que, cuando recibimos un gol, creo que tenemos que dar vuelta a la página y seguir intentando, porque creo que mejoramos en el juego, pero como vos decís, estamos todavía sintiendo eso, y nada, creo que eso es una de las cosas de lo que tenemos que ir mejorando.
I think it is frustrating because my teammates and I, when we're all putting in such a big effort, and we give up a goal like that, or when we give up a goal, it's difficult. So, you know, what you're saying, we feel it. It's one of the things that we need to change. But again, we can't give up. We just have to continue working and try to fix that.
Miguel Almiron after the match. And so you got to hear from Will Riley about last year and coming forward. You heard from Miguel Almiron from last year about last year and coming forward. So we'll keep an eye on all of that. But I wanted to play that sound that was available to us after the match and kind of have that out there just for understanding purposes where the Q&A comes from in post games. Really quickly, just one of the stats that obviously stood out to a lot of folks. We mentioned where it's what you do with it, even if you have a statistical advantage when it comes to time of possession. 57.6% possession. Columbus had 28 touches inside the 18. Atlanta only had 8. and 2 of them came on technically one play. That was the goal that trimmed the margin to 2-1 because Elias Baez had the shot from the left wing, and Patrick Schulte made the save. He parried it off to his left at a 45-degree angle, and you had Miggy who was crashing, and he makes contact with it, and it goes once again. Schulte is there to get in front of it, and then comes back out again, and then Alexei Miranchuk puts it in the back of the net. So 2 of those 8 touches technically inside the 18 happened on one play, and it was the goal that made it 2-1. So that is, as we've said, it's not good enough. We know that for a solid fact that it's not good enough. And I know that we've been discussing it this morning. Well, and there was an interview with Tata and Abby. I've been reading the quotes from Tata as well that were a part of this. Mentioned the return of Jay Fortune. We got into the intensity and his thoughts on the match, and we do have his thoughts about what happened at 90+1. So obviously we'll get into that too. And all right, this is going to be another sidebar question, and I don't know if it's a Monday, and so it is Easter Monday, by the way, in Canada and in England. And so obviously we do have early action going on Monday. It's a full Monday of soccer overseas, and once again, that's going to help us out tonight when it comes to looking at soccer over there. But this is just a sidebar question, show of hands. How many of you have Paramount Plus? How many of you have Paramount Plus? Show of hands. How many? For the longest time, for me, it has been better to see Paramount Plus on the smaller device. The smaller the device, the better. Because I am literally trying to navigate so I can have a game going on while we are, having our discussions about anything and everything. And legitimately, I am getting nothing. It's like I can go back and forth from one to the other, and I am having, it's like literally the smaller the device, the better the response. And the least amount of lag I get is on computer laptops and everything. And I didn't know if I was alone in this or not. So just checking. I didn't know if you guys, or if it was just me, which it wouldn't surprise me if it was just me. So me and computers, who knows? So it's giving me games that are over, as I sit here, because I'm trying to dial up the 10 o'clock games that have already started in a championship that we'll talk about tonight on SOT. But yeah, it is literally looking at me like I have like 3 heads or something. I have the spinning wheel of doom right now for a game that has been over for 15 minutes because that was the only place I could get into. And okay, so we're showing the past action, and now it's frozen. Good deal. Okay, there it is. So Wiley, thank you. Abby, thank you. And like I said, I didn't know if you guys had the same kind of buffering issues or access issues that I was having today. Just asking. Anyway, all right, past the top of the hour. And when Bart can join us, Bart will join us and go over everything going on in his purview, because we are going to talk about the men's national team. And we are going to talk about cards and calls. We have a moment in the Atlanta match to get into. And we have moments really in the Colorado-Toronto match where you end up with 3 reds. Match finishes 10-9. Toronto down 2-0, comes back to win 3-2. And you end up with 3 red cards and 29 total fouls called. So we'll get into that when Bart can. Yeah, there's your error code. There it is. Okay, so I got my error code. Finally. Okay, so let's try this again. Paramount Plus. There we go. So let's see if we can access it now. So that was what I was waiting for. I was waiting for the crash notification. That's another thing. But anyway, so we'll get into that with Bart coming up here just a little bit. Tomorrow is going to be our review day of the rest of Major League Soccer and the NWSL for the weekend. Casey White's going to join us at 10 o'clock. She was in Salt Lake. and we'll go over everything because Phil Neville is catching fire. There was a goofy goal in Bay and Spirit that we've got to get into. It was an own goal. And we mentioned, because like I said, today, since we are in Easter Monday in Canada and England, there's championship in League One and League Two going on right now today. It's a very big day. They've got a bunch of games going on in sequence. And so there was an article in BBC on EFL Championship and just how much in debt that whole league is. They took all the teams' debts and combined them together. And yes, it is $1 billion debt right now for everything going on in EFL Championship. We've got other stuff going on from FA Cup. You wonder about the future of Arne Slot and what happened after Liverpool got by Manchester City. And so there's plenty to get into with all of that. All right, it is now after 10:00. And so dealing with live television and everything, hang on, where are we here? Live TV and sports. And I will bring Bart in and we'll see if technology can behave. We'll see if technology can behave. So is technology behaving, Bart?
No, it hasn't been all morning, John, but we're here. So
yes, you are here. That is solid. All right. So there were a couple of things that I wanted to get into with cards and calls, but I know that you wanted to get into men's national team stuff, which is kind of, your purview, talking about national teams, both men's and women's. We got a women's camp coming up. We got all that stuff. What is on your mind when it comes to the U.S. insert letter here, NT, this week?
Well, John, seeing as you never let me be any sort of negative anytime I talk about any team, I don't really have much to say.
Oh, boy.
I will say this. I think as you look back on this men's national team window, there were two specific areas in which we actually did pretty good.
Yeah.
They didn't really help you win any games, unfortunately, but you did pretty good in two areas. One was set pieces. Obviously, you got a goal from Weston McKennie in the first game from a set piece. Probably maybe should have got a goal from Weston McKennie in the second game from a set piece, but you were certainly good at set piece attacking in these games. Right. And that is something that the U.S. has not been good at in a while.
Yeah.
I think that, we'll see if this is a trend that holds, but the trend seems to be Christian Pulisic not taking corner kicks. All of a sudden, the U.S. looking dangerous off of corner kicks. So, he's a great player in a lot of ways, but taking corner kicks doesn't seem to be one of his strengths for the U.S. men's national team. So that was one area.
Mm-hmm.
The other area was progressing the ball quickly from midfield to attacking line, especially dribbling the ball. A lot of guys being very good at progressing the ball on the dribble. What they did after that was very curious, but they at least were getting the ball from bottom of the center circle to top of the 18 with pretty good regularity. Again, I don't know what they were doing after that, but they were getting it from middle third to attacking third pretty decently. And especially in the game against Portugal, I feel like if you have a real striker up there, you probably get a goal off of one of those progressive dribbles.
So when you look at the two matches, and like I said, because the second match happened on Tuesday, when you look at it, what else sticks with you when it comes to concerns having only the two more friendlies that are attached? I know that we ran Mauricio Pochettino's sound after, and he was, he's not using the F word when it comes to the kind of match that these two were for the men's national team, because there is no real attached meaning to the result. So he didn't use the F word. He was talking about it being an exhibition. He used an E word instead of the F word. When we come out of those two matches and you lose 5-2 in the first one, obviously, and we got to discuss that one last week, but then you lose 2-0 in the second one. What are you looking at between now and that next round of the two exhibitions before we get into World Cup? What do you want to see out of this group, whether it's players abroad that are putting up numbers and trying to show that they're worthy of consideration? Where are your questions right now on the field and off?
I think the problem right now, John, is, and I think this is a this is the team. We could talk about some players who I think should be here. Alex Dejas from Liga MX is one of those, right? I think he probably is a guy who I want to see in the team, but does he make the team better? Maybe. He definitely provides some depth off the bench, but I don't think he's a starter by any stretch.
Right.
So that's kind of the issue that we're at here is the team is the team. And unlike Chris Henderson, we don't have 2 to 3 windows to then have 2 to 3 windows to then have 2 to 3 windows. We got to get it right now. And, you can't go find players. I know a lot of folks will point to Noki Banks from the Bundesliga and say, oh, if we had him, then we wouldn't be giving up any goals ever. The U.S. would never concede a goal ever again, or whatever their argument is about a 19-year-old who, still struggles to defend in space. But there are players who would make the team overall better.
Okay.
By how much is a question. I think it's fair to criticize the central midfielders in both games. I thought they were pretty okay in the first game. I thought that second half was really bad. There was no cover for Tim Weah defending one of the best attacking wingers in the world, one of the scariest players to see on the field in the world. And in the first half, you had some cover between both McKennie and Tessman, right? In the second half, you didn't have that ability to cover in the same way. I'll say I don't know if that's a tactical thing or a player thing because, John, I'll admit I had to go back and rewatch both of these games because I saw 0 goals live and in person. I was facing the other way. That's false. I did see the penalty kick in the Belgium game because I did turn around for that. But so on rewatch, it was a little harder to tell who was at fault because in the Portugal game, I do remember watching that first goal. I didn't get to fully see it because there are people in flags in front of me.
Yeah,
but
it was a filthy back heel from Bruno Fernandes. I mean, it was.
You could see the problem was a stretched defense, and you could pinpoint an exact problem. Right, Jedi was a little too high. We had some sloppy build-up play in the midfield, and then our midfielders were nowhere to be found to defend the ensuing attack. Right, that is a hey, Jedi, don't go up so quickly. Right,
yeah.
Or
I think in that particular goal, when you saw Portugal come down in transition, I thought that Bruno Fernandes was shielded well. He was not allowed to continue the run toward the post in front of him. He was shielded, and he had to continue. He was continually being pushed to make his angle if he wanted to shoot a difficult angle. But that meant that no one was paying attention to the trailer, or that the trailer had an advantage on the defenders coming back for the United States. And you literally saw this ring of green around around a player, and it was an easy opportunity for Portugal. But the knowledge that was there from Fernandes to understand that someone was going to be coming behind, and there was no one there to create that shot for goal number 1. I just thought that to me was how it looked anyway.
Right, and I think again Fernandes understanding I have 2 center backs on me, which means there's probably someone free somewhere in the middle. That is a level of play that we did not have on the field. That's just where we're at, right? And so that's kind of the struggle here is when you look forward is you wanted some hope that the U.S. could make a run, right? The question Pochettino is asking, why not us? Well, because we don't have the level of player that Portugal or Belgium have. And that's just the fact. You have some good players on this team. You have a Weston McKennie, you have Christian Pulisic, and they're pretty darn good. You could say they're great, especially in their leagues, right? You look at the way that they've throughout the year had really good seasons in Serie A. I don't think we have a player that you could even point to and say is comparable to Bruno Fernandes.
No.
Or, a lot of the guys on the Belgium team that were, I would say Belgium's a very good team with maybe 1 or 2 guys who are true game breakers.
Yeah. And
I think that was just the concern throughout, especially watching it back going, ooh, we don't have a guy out there who says, yeah, I'm going to score. And I do think that's going to be one of the problems we get to moving forward into the World Cup is We just didn't have that, especially in that second game when we did not have Flair and Balogun or any striker.
All right, so now you've raised a couple of questions for me here. One, who is your starting keeper right now?
That's Matt Freese. I will say, I think people were criticizing a little bit the start of Matt Turner in the first game. I felt it was a good idea to at least say, hey, Matt, here's your last chance.
Mm-hmm.
Freese has been the guy under Pochettino for a while. And while I don't think Matt Turner was bad, right, in the Belgium game, because as I will always say, a lot of wrong things have to happen before a shot comes off, especially in those Belgian game, to face a keeper. But I think it's fair to say he did not do a good enough job of parrying his rebounds into non-dangerous areas.
Yeah.
A couple of goals were directly because of that. Now, a couple of that is because, hey, man, you're just trying to save a shot because they were getting pretty good shots off. But the fact that a lot of his rebounds ended up in goals was not good. Matt Freese did look just more comfortable, and I think one thing that I've always criticized him for, and I'll continue to criticize him for, is I don't know where his goalkeeper leadership is. But he did, in terms of commanding his box, do a better job of it. Now, I've put a little bit of blame on him for that second goal Portugal scored, because why is no one aware that there's a dude at the top of the box who's very unmuch? And not just a dude, like a dude, right? It still required an amazing shot. I mean, the ball hits perfectly off the inside of the post to beat not just every defender who happens to step out, but João Felix is very good, and he's able to hit that. And that's the problem.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That second goal where you mentioned João Felix, first and foremost, the idea of that getting pushed and pressured, and you end up with, we ended up with our first freeze of the day. Okay, so here we go. So you end up with, you mentioned João Felix, and first and foremost, you don't step out. And the ball is floating toward him. It's not just a line drive. It's saved. It's deflected up into the air, and it gives the opportunity for him to settle to make sure that he can get a good handle on it. And then you end up with the ball settling, bouncing, handled, and then João Felix makes it's not a true volley, but it's like a half volley. And you end up with that particular shot going in off of the post, and you end up, it's 2, and you sit there and you tip your cap. I think that, and Kyle Martino said it on the match, where if he hits it on the straight volley, if João Felix gets that ball that's floating in the air and he hits it straight volley and it goes in the back of the net, you tip your hat, you sit there and you go, yeah, okay, that's on you, and you're not going to sit there and talk to the defense for the USMNT. But it had the opportunity to settle, bounce, he gains control, and half volleys it in. You can't have that.
No. And as a goalkeeper, I was furious, right? I'm going, how the hell did he get that? But as a goalkeeper, I think this is where I put a little bit of blame on Matt Freese. You have to identify that player and say, hey, so-and-so, you've got him if it goes to him. Mm-hmm. Now, that also could be a coaching issue. Coaches need to maybe help identify that. But you got to say, hey, I watched it back, and we did have 2 free guys in the penalty area. Mm-hmm. The U.S. had 2 free defenders, I should say. Now, part of that is just general corner kick defending. You have a guy kind of on the front part of the 6, kind of on the back side of the 6 to be the zonal. You're not zonal marking necessarily. You're just saying, hey, we got to have someone else in there for a header. Everyone else is marked. So on that play, everyone.
Unbelievable. This is, on that play. This is, I don't know if it's a phone issue or what, but we got it. I'm going to be talking to customer service at some point, because this is out of hand. So yes, on the play. Yeah, on the play, yes, Bart.
On the play, the problem that just comes down to, you've got to identify which person's supposed to take that player at the top of the box. That's just where we're at.
Yep, absolutely. Is Chris Brady getting any call-ups in the 2 exhibitions coming up just to kind of get reps when it comes to national team?
No.
Okay.
I don't think Matt Freese has done anything to lose his starting spot.
No.
I could see maybe he gets playing time in Chicago or whatever, but I do think at this point in time, Chris Brady is your third goal.
I would agree. Chris Brady right now is the number 3. So we'll get into that. And I wanted to ask that, considering what we saw from Chris Brady and have been seeing from Chris Brady over the last little bit. That's why I wanted to ask that particular question involving what's going on where he is concerned in the goalkeeping pantheon, I guess is probably the best way for me to phrase it. One other question that I had for the national team stuff with Bart specifically has to do with back 4. Well, I have 2 questions. So I have the question about back 4 versus back 5, and I think that we saw against Belgium that it needs to be a back 5, or at least you need to have 3 center backs, 2 wing backs. That's what you've got to have. You cannot have a back 4 because of what Jeremy Doku did in the second half of the Belgium game, working his way around the left-hand side and having too much space for any kind of help to come and try to collapse. Because when we talked to Tim Weah after that match, he said specifically that the game plan was for them to double him and then for them to use the touch line, the near touch line as you're watching it, to be that next particular defender, for lack of a better word. So that was what Tim Weah had said after the match, specifically when he was discussing defending Doku. But I think that we learned that you've got to have 3 center backs, and I think that you also have got to have those 2 wing backs. If you're gonna try and pin in a talented winger, you need to have 3 center backs and a wing back, at least defensively, coming through. And then you've got to also have the carry going forward of understanding that, okay, you might be sacrificing a little bit defensively to make sure that you don't have those moments like you did in the second half with Belgium and when Jeremy Doku flipped the switch, basically, and was attacking the back 4 of the United States. You could tell that it needed to be 3 center backs, and it needed to be 3 center backs, 2 wing backs, and not a back 4. So that is one of the things that we needed to. I think we learned that specifically with this particular group. And then my other question for Bart is, when it comes to having a team that you can carry on your back, and I know that he has mentioned Christian Pulisic as a part of this, and when you have Christian Pulisic, you know that he is going to be double teamed. You know that he is going to be the focus of a lot of attention. So when he is double teamed, or when he is, for whatever reason, not available, who is that individual on this roster that can put the team on their proverbial back and carry them forward and will them to a victory? He can be that guy that can do whatever is needed from an attacking perspective and grab the USMNT by the scruff of the neck, bring them forward. If you need that goal to get an equalizer, if you need that goal to get a game winner, if you need both, if you're in a group situation, is there anyone on this roster that can be that person? That is my larger question. So those are the 2 questions. Well, really, it's an activation and a question for Bart. We learned that it's got to be a back five under most situations against teams that are higher ranked than you in the FIFA rankings. And so when you're going up against teams that have deeper rosters than you and are higher ranked than you, definitely it's going to be, and if you fear the wing play of those particular teams, then I think it behooves the United States once again. It's got to be 3 center backs, 2 wing backs, and then pursuing forward. So 3-5-2, 5-3-2, and then maybe, in an attack it's a 4-4-2, something like that. So I think that's what you're staring at when it comes to this team defensively, and then you build your roster accordingly. And then when it comes to this particular roster and the folks that you assemble, who is going to be that second guy? Who's going to be the second guy? I agree with Bart about Matt Freese being your starting keeper. Now I wonder who the third is, and can that 3 challenge to be a top 2? And so considering what we have heard out of Chicago the last little bit, is Chris Brady that guy? Does he get that kind of consideration? So that's the larger element in this for me. So that's kind of where I was when it came to these questions. And so when the show is over today, I'm going to double check, because and this is a technical thing, and so this is where I'm completely and totally just at a loss. So there have been too many guests that have been having issues, and so I'm going to get into that later after the show is over. So yeah, I can understand Bart's frustration, and trust me, I can understand every other guest's frustration when they're like on a phone and dialing in. And I don't know if it's something that has to do with the technology that's attached, if it has to do with cell service or what have you. But I'm going to get into that because it's happened too much. All right. That was technology down here. And I apologize to Bart, and I apologize to all of you for Bart ducking in, ducking out, ducking in, and ducking out, because his signal will freeze. And like I said, I will try and itemize what's going on and find out, because when you're in a setting like this, you're fine. And traditionally, when you've been on, one of these, you're fine. But recently, it's just been weird. So we'll get into that as we go. Okay. So I've got my 2 questions for Bart. If he can, if technology will cooperate in any manner, way, shape, or form. So I've got 2 more questions for Bart if he dials back in here today. Otherwise, we will continue to discuss that next time. And then we'll get into cards and calls, specifically let's get into one of them, because then we can save Toronto and Colorado for when Bart drops back in. But 31st minute. And we talked about it post game. And once again, I know that we've been the discussion sometimes in the Twitch pitch has to do with, talking about blaming the refs and everything. That is not in this case specifically, and most times in general, it is about wanting to make the game better. And if you are a top 12 league internationally and you continue to have these issues, your game cannot improve. The position isn't held with the respect that it deserves. And you got to figure out, okay, how do we fix this? So that's why we do this with Bart every week, is we look in, we try to be as vigilant as we can in looking at these individuals, because we want them to be better. We want the game to be better. And we want to try and understand, and that's why we bring Bart in on these situations, to understand, okay, what is the center ref thinking in a situation like this, so we can get that sense of understanding as to where they're coming from when it comes to particular calls. And so I looked at the one call last night involving Atlanta and Columbus. And it was the Arfston moment in the early 30s. And I literally went I was all over what was going on in that particular moment. And okay, so we are in. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, and this is when Atlanta was on offense going from left to right. And so it was in the early 30s when it happened. And so you have Alzate, 35th minute. And so Alzate sends a pass from outside the 18. He's about 22 or 3 yards away, but he's a couple of yards extended from the edge of the 18. Sends the pass in, looking to the far post, and then you end up with Max Arfston. You see 3 Atlanta United players go down: Mihai, Gregerson, and Latelot. Ball goes over all 3 of them, and it goes outside the 18, and then that gives Columbus the opportunity and gives Arfston the chance to look over his left shoulder and then come back the other way. But then he gets to about 35 yards out, and then you have Lorenzo Hernandez, the center ref, finally blow his whistle because Gregerson is grabbing his head and Latelot is still down. Mihai had gotten up and was trying to get back into the play. This particular play was not reviewed under any auspice or circumstance, or at least to our knowledge. We don't know if VAR basically said no, nothing there, or VAR wasn't consulted, or center ref was just like, nah, I'm good. So the angles that were had from Apple, ball goes to Alzate. He sends it in, and it's a pretty solid ball. Then you have Arfston, and you see Latelot, who is skying to make the header, and Schulte is squared to either make the save or watch the ball go past him. Latelot is in the air. You see Gregerson going down, or he's being kind of, he and Mihai. So Mihai is behind Gregerson. Gregerson's legs get kind of caught up in Mihai's, so he really doesn't have any place to go. Mihai is being pushed from behind. You see the right forearm of Max Arfston with, actually, let me look at this really quickly. So it is Mihai and Gregerson, and it looks like Arfston's right arm is in the back of Mihai as the ball is heading toward Latelot at the far post. The contact that is made cleans all 3 of them out. Arfston into Mihai, into Gregerson, and Latelot gets low bridged, and he hits the surface. Nothing there was called. And you see Arfston literally pushing from behind and making sure that any one of those 3, Mihai, Gregerson, or Latelot by association, cannot make contact with the ball. And Sophia Cupertino, she had that sequence. She was right there. And you see literally the angles that are there, the slash cameras for Apple, are kind of shielded a little bit. They're either far away or the angle isn't as tight as it needs to be. Sophia was on ground level at the far post, and she has that sequence. And you see Arfston's right arm literally pushing Mihai in the back. Gregerson has nowhere to go once Mihai is being pushed, so he's going down on Mihai's contact, and Latelot is kind of being wiped out as both of them are going down. Game is goalless at that point. No call is made. And so when you look at what happened with Columbus not getting a call, or Atlanta not getting a call against Columbus, it should have been a penalty, at least in my view. I feel like we need to have Bart almost do this almost like an inside the VAR studio kind of thing. So you end up with no call and play on, and Columbus heads back the other way. We always talk about how goals change games, And yeah, and Abby, we'll get into the fight here in a minute. So you had that call not made in the 35th, which should have been a penalty, at least in my view, because if literally you see Max Arfston clearing out with his right arm, and you see Arfston clearing out, and he goes into Mihai into Gregerson takes out Latte-Lat. So because of that movement, nothing happens. So nothing happened in the 35th. And so at that point, I think it should have been a penalty. And frankly, it should have been 1-0. And like I said, we talked about post-game goals, changing games, etc. We talked about game state. But call wasn't made. End of the day, Atlanta United didn't do anything in the last 40 minutes, really, offensively. And you get to 2-1. Second time this year, you give up a goal within 2 minutes. Obviously, the first one was against Salt Lake, as we talked about with Abe in hour number 1. And you have what happened there continue to work its way forward. So another instance where Atlanta gets close, goal happens, margin goes back to 2. They don't get anything moving offensively. 3-1 final, Lawson out the door. But pulling this moment aside, once again, it's like I don't know what VAR was looking at, or even if they were looking. Then you end up with no call, play on, and everything heads back the other way. Now to the fight. The fight, in and of itself, it was at 90 plus. And you had, and I'm trying to see who it was, because it was a run by application error, client-side exception. There's no such thing. I hate to break it to you, but that didn't happen. I was staring at the same page the entire time. A client-side exception in the application error. That's what I'm getting from SofaScore these days. It's like if it's stable for X number of minutes and I don't push a button, it sits there and freaks out. So let me go back and find the roster for Columbus again, and we will see if we can figure out who it was. I think it was Hugo Picard. So late in the match, you're talking in 90 plus 1. You have a player running for the ball in front of the Columbus bench. And like I said, I think it was Hugo Picard. Don't quote me yet because I'm going to look at it a second time. So then it goes, and Elias Baez is chasing after the ball in front of the bench of Columbus. Yeah, I think it was Hugo Picard. So, because Picard had a rush in the 89th minute that went the other way. So you end up with Picard chasing after the ball, Baez chasing after the ball, and you end up with Picard making contact with Elias Baez. Baez, when you look at it, is turning away from really making any kind of solid contact. He's trying to soften the blow or turn away from the massive contact. So Baez is turning away as he's running, and so you end up with a collision with him and Hugo Picard. So Picard goes down, and Picard is grabbing his head at this point. So I think I'm to that particular point, or we're getting close. Like I said, I'm kind of watching the replay as we go. And you end up with contact and concern, shall we say, in front of the Columbus bench. And so then Columbus's bench is in an uproar as Picard is down. And then you have center ref come over after a handful of seconds and then give the card to Baez. And then with all of the back and forth going on with Baez after Mihai gets the red, after Baez gets the yellow card, after Mihai had gotten the yellow. So you have that moment, and then it escalates from there. And I'm trying to get to the escalation here using, it's like fast forward's not fast forwarding enough, basically. So, all right. So you've got, all right. So 90-33. So we're getting close. Like I said, I'm trying to get to the point, but I don't want to do play-by-play because that might get us in trouble. So initially 11 minutes, which in itself was kind of wild. But you end up with the collision happening and then coming together and both teams needing to be separated from one another. And I do have the sound in full from Henrik Rydström after the match, and I will play it in its entirety, the question and all the way through the answer, because you do see a quote that is there, but I'm going to give the full soundbite, and it's a little tinny, but I do have the full soundbite from postgame with Henrik Rydström and discussing the play. So, all right, so Jamal takes out Elias Baez going camera left. And so then you see Crew trying to work their way forward. Baez turns to look at Jamal, with Jamal having the possession. Picard runs into Elias Baez. Then you get the yellow to Baez. And then Mihai and Baez have issues with what's being said from the bench. Tata comes over outside of his technical area. Then you have an assistant trying to separate everybody. Jorge Keeler comes in. Players come in to try to pull Tata away. Rudy Camacho wants to have words with Tata, as does Steven Moreira. And Camacho's trying to separate. Jorge Keeler's trying to separate. Everybody's trying to pull folks apart. Then you end up with that happening. And by the end of it all, you end up with a red card for Tata Martino. You end up with yellows for Henrik Rydström and with Dylan Shambo, who was on the bench at the time for Columbus. And so obviously that means that Tata will not be on the touchline unless there's some kind of an appeal that was to happen for Atlanta United going up to Chicago. Like I said, I imagine Tata is going to make the trip, but it will not be he will not be on the touchline. So Tata got his red at 92:53, and he got the red for choice words, shall we say. It was posted that it was a longer way than that. But for Tata leaving the technical area and for language used in the moment, Tata ended up with the red card. But you end up with all of that getting just completely out of hand. And then you added another couple of minutes, and 11 turned into 14 by the time you were done. So Tata was asked about it after the match. And Abe, exactly. He was protecting Baez specifically. And I think it was one of the coaches for Crew decided that they wanted to have a bit of a back and forth with Baez, who was the closest to the Crew bench at the time. So Tata said this after the match. My anger, the frustration, I can't put it on the opponent because I have a problem, not the opponent. My anger is because in soccer there are codes, and opposing coaches shouldn't talk to my players because then I'm going to defend my players. Furthermore, the foul on Baez was a normal foul, a yellow card. They gave him a yellow card. I didn't think it was a yellow card because Baez basically is turning away from Picard, and he's looking at Jamal Tiare as the play is going this way. So Baez is turning away from Picard and looking at Tiare. And it literally was Picard running into Baez's shoulder. It wasn't anything where it was elbow up or anything like that. Literally, Baez ran into Baez was the roadblock that Picard ran into. Tata continued. He didn't lift his arms. It was a foul that he provoked. They gave him the card. He didn't have any right to speak with my player unless in the terms that he was so. I had to defend my player. It's not right that I was sent off, in no way. So we have no word yet on if Atlanta United is going to challenge the red card that was issued to him in the moment at Mercedes-Benz. So that was Tata after the match. Henrik Rydström, there's a quote that has been itemized that is out there. Here is the question and the full response from Rudström after the match involving what happened there at the end. So once again, this is courtesy of our friends at the crew themselves from post-match, Henrik Rudström, their head coach, on what happened at the end.
One last thing, just kind of what happened in that stoppage time moment where the two benches kind of came together, exchanged some words and everything.
I think it was one bench that come over to us. I think we were quite calm, but of course when we have the whole stuff there, it's interesting. I think they reacted because I was there. It's so childish. Their player was shouting on the referee in front of me, and I told him to shut up, basically. And then I had their coach here. Never seen him moving so fast. So, and then, then their players, they have no clue what I have said because I didn't say anything strange. And then, it just builds and builds. So, very interesting. In Sweden, I can say it's a lot of fights between the benches. So, and I didn't say anything to them. So, but they were very upset. So, but that's part of it. And I think also that showed the passion, and we stood up for each other in a good way. We did. I didn't do anything, and my team and my players behaved in a good way. So, it was good to see.
Okay, so Henrik Rudström after the match basically says, well, I didn't do anything. And that may be factually true. I think a lot of folks were looking at one of his assistant coaches in that regard. So when you have an opposing coach go to an opposing player and basically tell opposing player, and this is with Rudström's words, where Rudström basically has people on his staff telling the opposing player, shut up, as he said, then, as Tata said, he's going to come over and defend his players. So, as Tata says, there are codes. And when you have a coach for an opposing team kind of jawing back and forth with one of your players, Tata is going to instantly defend that player. And so, yes, leaving the technical area, I have no idea about any choice words or colorful metaphors or anything like that. But that was why I wanted to play that soundbite from Rudström and have all of you, and like I said, that was the full soundbite. That was question and answer. That was not edited in any way. That was the full deal. And I wanted to put that out there as his response in full to Tata's quote as it was given to us post-match. There was something in there, if you caught it, and like I said, the quote in it of itself has been posted. Rudström's quote has been posted. And to what has been posted and what you heard about halfway into that particular soundbite, I have Scandinavian family. And we also know with our time here in Atlanta, in and around particular coaches, they can be very blunt. And they're going to say what they think. Something in the middle of that soundbite, I think that Henrik Rudström is going to have to probably at some point, and you don't know when that's going to be, he will answer to. And you heard a couple of snickers when that particular element of the answer came up. And I think, like I said, I think there will be a point where he may have to answer to the piper on that one. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But that was Rudström after the match, and Tata defending his players, and Rudström, understanding his staff and making sure that everybody knew where he was coming from. Rudström standing up for his staff, Tata standing up for his team. Tata left his technical area. And apparently, according to the official wording, is that Tata ended up getting the red for language, basically. So we'll see. We'll see what fallout is from that, and if Atlanta United challenges the red card, because once again, Tata said he did not deserve the red, and we will see. We'll see what happens. He says, not right that I was sent off, in no way. So we'll see what happens there with Tata Martino going forward. Will they challenge? And we'll see what happens. Okay. Once again, I know that a lot of you had a lot to say to get off your chest this morning, and that's why we have the show the way that we have it. So the Twitch pitch can have conversations that are attached, and that you guys can go back and forth with one another and share notes, because you may not necessarily get to see each other at a home match. You might not be in the same grouping with each other if it's an away match. And so it's a chance, once again, that's why we have the Twitch pitch, so you guys can bring your thoughts to the table as well. And we're always thankful for that you guys have that you've made us your part of your day, Monday through Friday, good times and bad, to continue to discuss things. And we have the discourse that we do. And obviously we can't thank you guys enough for all of that. Okay. Let's kind of take the tour, let you know what else is going on in and around. A really cool piece of stuff just happened. And it happened, it happened at 10 o'clock this morning. And so this is a really cool piece of breaking news. I did not know that this was a thing, but it's a thing. And you never know where it's going to come from. But get this. Clayton State Athletics Hall of Fame class of 2026. One of those individuals is our Jess Charman. Jessica Charman, along with Ayrton Askew, Sean Baddock in soccer, Craig Butts in men's hoops, Mike Mead in cross country, Katreya Shaw in women's hoops, and Tio Toddy in women's soccer. Jessica Charman is going into the Clayton State Athletics Hall of Fame, class of 2026. Came out from our friend Sam Vibrock this morning at 10 o'clock. One of the most decorated student athletes in program history. 34 matches, 154 saves, 353 shots. Following 2017, Peach Belt Conference Scholar Athlete of the Year. Still the only Laker to earn this distinction. 3-time Peach Belt All-Academic. First-team Arthur Ashe Sports Scholar Athlete. And we know what the rest is with Jess. But on the field and off, one of the most decorated student athletes in program history. So Jessica Charman is going into the Clayton State Athletics Hall of Fame. Saturday, May the 2nd, 1 o'clock in the University Center Commons. And so we'll keep an eye on that. But Jess is going into a Hall of Fame at Clayton State. So that's very, very cool. And obviously we could not be more proud of that for Jess. So that's cool. That's very, very cool. I did not know that that was there. But so Jessica Charman goes into the Hall of Fame at Clayton State. Very, very cool. So Hall of Fame class of 26. Jess gets to lock in, #LockIn, LOCHIN. And we get to find out how long her speech is going to be and all the things. So we'll keep an eye on that going forward. But congratulations to Jess, as she is now going to be a Hall of Famer as of early May at Clayton State University. We'd mentioned that one of Pep Guardiola's assistant coaches has said that Bernardo Silva, he is set to exit City. And so that is going to be on the books. And so we'll see what happens there with Cité as he leaves and how they're going to chase after replacements. So getting into the gossip, rumor, and innuendo, Barcelona and Juve leading the chase to sign Bernardo Silva on a free. Pep Linders once again gave that strong indication. Silva's agents and reps have basically said the same thing. Contract set to expire in June, linked to moves with the league we don't talk about, Juve, Barcelona, and Benfica. Arsenal, Manchester United, Manchester City, Liverpool, Chelsea, PSG, and Bayern have been contacted by intermediaries regarding a possible move for Vinicius Jr. this summer, according to Team Talk. Some of Europe's clubs have been sounded out about a deal entering the final year of his contract, and the league we don't talk about is ready to move and ready to pounce if the opportunity is there. Contract talks have stalled last couple of months. Sources tell the four-letter that negotiations may not resume until after the World Cup, although the player has reiterated that he wants to stay. Real Madrid increasingly confident of sealing a move for Manchester City midfielder Rodri this summer, according to Team Talk. Allegedly have held discussions with City about possible terms for an exit. Continues to be linked with the Bernabeu. Real Madrid, quote, won't pay over the odds, whatever that means, to bring the Spain international to the club. Offer of €60 million reportedly will be enough to do a deal. AS reporting that Real Madrid open to a potential exit for Camavinga, PSG monitoring the situation. The 23-year-old's been with Los Blancos since 21, but has struggled to make himself a regular starter since joining from Rennes. Switch back to Ligue 1 could reunite his career once again. Madrid would want to make a profit on the €40 million they paid to sign him 5 years ago. Arsenal soon expected to make a formal approach to sign Bayer Leverkusen striker Christian Kofane. According to Christian Falk, Gunners have been linked with €65 million move for the 19-year-old, with an offer expected in the coming weeks. Cameroonian internationals made 40 appearances across all comps, 7 goals, 8 assists. Bayern Munich also reported to be monitoring his progress. RB Leipzig discussing a new contract with €80 million rated winger Yan Diomande that could include a release clause amid links with moves to like Liverpool and Manchester United, according to Fabrizio Romano. Diomande, who is only 19, Leipzig keen to let him develop as well. Other rumors on the board: Liverpool could sign Al Hilal forward Marcus Leonardo to replace Mo Salah this summer. That's from GMS, Gimme Sport. Manchester United among the clubs keen to sign Aston Villa midfielder Amadou Onana. Spain forward Dani Olmo not planning on leaving Barcelona this summer amid links to the league we don't talk about. AC Milan pushing to sign midfielder Leon Goretzka as a free agent when he leaves Bayern Munich in the summer. It's from Calcio Mercato. Italy midfielder Manuel Locatelli closing in on a contract renewal with Juve until the year 2030. That's from our friends at Tuttosport. Liverpool keen on Brighton midfielder Carlos Baleba. Newcastle winger Anthony Gordon as a part of a summer rebuild. That's from Ekrem Konur. Also, Konur has City, Barca, and Bayern all showing interest in Chelsea defender Josh Achiampong amid his lack of playing time at Chelsea, and Harry Wilson being on Tottenham's short list of transfer options, looking set to become free at the end of his contract at Fulham. Antonio Rudiger progressing in talks to extend his contract at Real Madrid as he nears the final 12 months of his deal with Los Blancos. That's from Nicolo Shira. Barcelona and PSG both interested in 16-year-old Mali wunderkid Abubakar Maiga, who plays for Africa Foot Academy, as an option for the future. That's from Sport. And Abby, have a good non-Manic Monday to you as well. So that's your gossip, your rumor, and your innuendo. Now, we mentioned that today is Easter Monday, and I had not, all I did was look at a calendar, and it said Easter Monday in Canada. And I was like, well, what is Easter Monday? And I found out, courtesy of our friends at the Wikipedias, that Easter Monday actually is a thing. And in finding out about Easter Monday, second day of Eastertide and a public holiday in more than 50 predominantly Christian countries. In Western Christianity, marks the second day of the octave of Easter. In Eastern Christianity, it marks the second day of Bright Week. Bright Monday or Renewal Monday. Services different from the rest of the year. Outdoor processions, divine liturgies, etc. So you've got national observances in Australia, public holiday. Just to give you an example. Canada, Le Lundi de Pâques is Monday immediately following Easter Sunday, statutory holiday for federal employees. And so it's like 50 countries, and apparently it's a holiday. So who knew? I did not. But in Central Europe, it's there. And so it's all over the place. So you've got a lot of soccer going on today on the books. To give you an example, BN en Español, simulcasting the Polish League, triple header, 8:45, 11:30, and 2:15. And you can get BN, all the BNs, and a bunch of other networks at Fanatis, fntz.co/soccer down here. And with that, you get all the BNs, which means you get Polish League, Turkish League, French League. You also get CAF, you get AFCON, you get African Champions League that's attached to CAF as well. You get ties into Tigo Sports. You get ties into CATV. You get Copa Argentina from TIC, along with all of their Argentine programming. You get TVV from Venezuela if you want to add it. You get CEO and CDO2. You get Liga 1 Max Pro out of Peru. You get a lot of the A and B divisions in a lot of the South American countries, when you sign on to Fanatis, which means you also get Libertadores and Sudamericana, Libertadores is kicking back in now that we know the field of 48. If you missed Howard Hamilton's release over the weekend on this, the Soccer Metrics Copa Libertadores show, you can get Howard's pieces of history. You can find out about the field of 48, and you can find out when the next matches are, and you can get his preview heading into the field of 48 for Libertadores. So you can get all of that at Fanatis. CBS Sports Network, 3 o'clock, Hull City and Coventry City. ESPN Deportes has La Liga at 3 o'clock. Fox Soccer Plus has 2 matches in Serie B at 9 and 1:30. Paramount Plus right now, I'm watching, or at least I was, until Paramount Plus froze again. So it is 6 matches possible on Paramount Plus, and you can have that today in one matchup in the USL Super League at 6:30. It is Fort Lauderdale and DC. So that's just the small part of what you can watch today at Fanatis. fntz.co/soccer down here. That link helps them out, helps us out, and helps you out, adding more matches to everything that you're already watching. Once again, you get BN, the home of AFCON, along with TSA, matches from Argentina, more leagues from South America, all in one place. One subscription, one home at Fanatis, fntz.co/soccer down here. So also on the board, once again, if you do not have any of these items, then you can pick them up with us as well. Once again, our friends at Black Pitch Coffee, thanks for hanging out with us and being a part of everything. Also, remember Grady Baby and GradyBaby.com, Grady-Baby.com, that you can get our collaboration with our friends at Grady Baby, Grady-Baby.com. The soccer is just better in Atlanta gear that is in the red and the black with the gold embossed lettering. Soccer is just better in Atlanta. Once again, proceeds of that supporting middle school soccer programs in Atlanta public schools. More than just about gear. Once again, growing the game through middle school soccer programs attached to APS. You've also got our friends at the Marshall Islands who are, trying to find out. They just had their first futsal championship, by the way. So futsal championship on the island, and you can get their gear to help them continue to build their program there nationally, and you can get the scarves from me. We've got a new shipment in here in the office, so if you don't have the Marshall Islands scarf yet, to help them keep the lights on and make sure that they can go one year to the next and try to qualify for things in Oceania and become a full-fledged member of the Oceania Confederation as they continue to grow. Get the scarf from me, get the gear from them. I can mail you the scarf easier than if you were to order it from them, and then you can help out in that aspect too. So our friends at the Marshall Islands, you can help them out. The last country on the planet trying to get a national team going, and you can help them out picking up all the gear, grab the scarves, all the things. So that's kind of where we're at this morning with all of those. And yes, and so Abby's wishing everyone a non-manic Monday, and that's always the fun part. So once again, tonight, we got a lot of stuff to get into on Soccer Over There. We've got FA Cup to get into. We've got coaches under fire. We have what's going on in the Canadian Premier League once again. FES Challenge, the Wenger variant when it comes to offsides. We're going to have their Executive Vice President, Kostas Smirniotis, joining us at 10:30 on Wednesday morning to break down all of the trials that are going on. They had their first ever FES Challenge this past weekend, and they wasted no time. It was the opening weekend for that. But they've got a lot of stuff going on that they're trialing and enforcing when it comes to the laws of the game. So we're going to catch up with Kostas Smirniotis, the Canadian Premier League EVP, 10:30 on Wednesday morning, and we'll go through everything going on in the Canadian Premier League this year. Tonight, once again, stuff in the EFL Championship about just how off the rails it is financially. Paul Quinn at the ESK.org has his new treatise out about the John Textor lawsuit from Botafogo against everyone in Europe, specifically Lyon. And you've got possible unification of leagues in Brazil and a lot of different things going on that are attached to the World's Game. And you've also got Picks of the Week coming back, because since we were flying around so much last week, it was kind of hard to do Picks of the Week. And since we were doing it remotely and we were talking U.S. men's national team and all the things, it was kind of hard to do Picks of the Week last week. And so we're going to reinstate that tonight, and we'll figure out what's going on with Picks of the Week and everything tonight. Reinstated starting 8 o'clock here on the network. Soccer Over There, 8 to 10, and we'll go from there. Tomorrow, Casey White's going to join us at 10 o'clock, and we're going to go through the week that was at Major League Soccer, the week that was in NWSL. She was in Salt Lake. We're going to talk about how good the young team is there at RSL and find out what her adventure was like there as RSL continues to roll in the Western Conference early on this year. And we wish all of you a great Monday. Hopefully all of your equipment will work better than it does here at times, apparently. And we will have a big day coming up tonight. Once again, 8 o'clock, 8 to 10. We'll be back at it again here, 9:05 tomorrow with another go-round of SDH AM. And so once again, thanks to all of you. Let me see who was here today. Let me go through who was here and say hi. Saw Emilio, saw Tom, saw Abby, saw Michael Head, who was in here this morning. Let's see. Morning Wiley. And let's see. Morning Will. And let's see. I'm trying to see if there's anybody else that I missed. Emilio was in this morning. Will and Emilio and Abby and Michael. And like I said, I saw the airborne DJ Tom Russo was in this morning. And let's see. Who else am I? I saw Ricky at the top of the list who was in this morning. Let's see. I'm scanning backward. And let's see. Michael and Tom and Emilio and the Soccer for Good OG is in this morning. Good to see you, OG, as a part of the conversation. And like I said, I'm scanning backward, but I do love the fact that you guys still come in and have the conversations that you do with one another and with me in the Twitch pitch every single day. So Emilio, Will, Michael, Tom, who am I missing? And I know that there's more, but actually, let me go over this way. Let me do it over here and go all the way back to the top of the order, and I can sit there and look at it this way and see what's going on. So let's see. Yes, Ricky, Will, Michael, Emilio. And Emilio, to your first point, it's always okay to boo. It's always okay to boo. That is never if you're mad, express your displeasure however you express your displeasure. And if that means booing them off the pitch, then boo them off the pitch. That is your prerogative. So Emilio, Michael, OG, David, Will, morning Lokeville joining in. And so, yes, hopefully Lokeville, that helped out at the end with the bench clear. Tata took exception to the opposing bench talking smack to one of his players, came over, things escalated. Tata gets a red. Looked like he might have been pushed by one of the assistants for crew. But do not be surprised if the disciplinary committee comes out with something, and a lot of folks get envelopes. When that does happen, we'll cover that too. Let's see. Michael will. And basically, whomever the other coach was, basically was telling him to shut up. That's what he's telling Baez. So, U.S. Open Cup is next week, and so next week is Open Cup, and we'll be up in Chattanooga. I know I will be, and so we'll be there in. We've got to figure out broadcast plans, but I think it's a 7 o'clock start for Open Cup. And then it is, let's see, so after Open Cup, it is, let's see, that is on Sunday. And so let me go into next week. I think it's a 7 o'clock start. Is it a 7 or a 7:30? Tuesday. So it's Wednesday the 15th, 7:30. So that probably means that it is Five Stripes Countdown from Findlay. SDH will probably do something before Five Stripes Countdown, get you ready for Chattanooga. I will be doing the Thursday the 16th show from a hotel room because I'm not driving home after the match. So that's next week. So Wednesday the 15th from Fort Findlay, round of 32. That'll be where Atlanta United is. And that Surface, once again, continues to win no friends and give no favors. So we'll see what happens there. I think that's everybody. But no, thanks to everyone, as always, for chiming in and diving in, as you always do when it comes to anything and everything here on the morning show. So there was that was a rundown. And And there's the conversations. Okay, I think I got everybody. All right. So once again, thanks everybody for coming in, as you always do. And we will continue to talk about more of it tomorrow. Whatever's on your mind tomorrow, go ahead and dial it up and dive in, and we'll go. And tomorrow we're going to talk about the rest of MLS. NWSL, Casey White's going to join us at 10 o'clock, and the week is off and running. So once again, for all of us here at SDH and SDH AM, back tonight, 8 o'clock, for the rundown of everything going on soccer over there, including Picks of the Week in hour number 2, where we learn about everything going on in and around the planet. So for everybody here at SDH, thanks to all of y'all for coming in. Back at it in 8 hours and 49 minutes. We're going to talk about everything going on overseas. For everybody here, to all of you there, thanks for hanging out with us. Mucho Platiel, played safe. Since it's the end of the show, that means you get to do this. We'll see you in a bit.